everybody to the Nonverbal Communication Podcast. I'm your host for today. My name is Josh. Alongside me are my group mates, Ryan, Emmanuel, and Jared. And today, we will be talking about nonverbal communication. And three things about it is, number one, how much do we actually communicate without words daily? Second is, when and how does nonverbal communication could go wrong? And lastly are some lying and deception, and how can we detect them through the nonverbal communication. So let's get started.
Go for it. All right, let me just start it by asking a question. What does nonverbal communication mean to you? For me, it means all forms of communication that are said without words. Example, body language, gender, gestures, and even socioeconomic status. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I think it can mean a lot of different things. Facial expressions, smiling, frowning, eye contact, and other different things. Body language, posture, I think plays into that. Like, it shows the person, okay, how confident are you in this conversation? Are you into this conversation, or are you kind of just like, you're just trying to, hurry up and get the conversation over with? So I agree with what you're saying. And those are kind of my views on what nonverbal communication means.
To piggyback off of you, Ryan, I'm big on appearance. So if somebody's giving me a look, or they're making eye contact with me, I can also tell a lot by how they're feeling, based off what they have on. Or like for you, you have on a Spider-Man shirt, so I'm assuming you're a Spider-Man fan, or something like that. Or it was nice outside, so you want to wear shorts, like you're having a good day. I pick up stuff like that based on somebody's appearance. So that's one of my keys to go to for nonverbal, to see somebody how they're feeling, is appearance.
And you're a Kobe Bryant fan.
And I am a
and
Kobe
San
Bryant
Francisco
fan.
Giants fan. Yeah, just to add on, or actually summarize everything that you guys said. And as a communications major, I think when it comes to nonverbal communication, there are actually 4 categories of nonverbal communication. First thing is paralanguage, which deals with tone, volume, and pitch. Next up is body movement, which includes facial expressions, just like what you guys were talking about earlier, and gestures and posture, and even eye contact is part of body movement. Second is, third is appearance, and just like you guys were mentioning, clothing is under appearance. Also the body type of a person, and the accessories like the baseball hats that you guys have. And lastly is environment. And under environment, this is where space and time comes in. So yeah. Now, let's get into our first segment and answer the question, how much do we actually communicate without words daily?
Well, according to the Salem Press Encyclopedia of Health by Karen Fontenot in 2023, they stated that 93% of all emotional meaning is transferred via nonverbal communication. That can entail that just because you're not speaking, people can look at your car, they can look at your shoes, they can look at the way you dress yourself, and learn so much about you that you can even seem more approachable to some people that way. What do you guys have to think about that?
Yeah,
Well, I agree with what you're saying, and I think it's all of those things play into the way somebody views you, or the way that you go about yourself. Like what you were saying, dressing nicely compared to just wearing street clothes. Like if somebody walks in a building, and if there's 2 people that walk in the building, and one person's wearing a suit and the other person's just wearing like a hoodie with sweats or whatever, people are going to be more, they're going to feel like, okay, the person with the suit is more approachable than probably the person that is dressed just in loungy wear. And I think it's just, it's how society works. It's, you're going to be drawn to the person that's more clean cut, that's more, those are all nonverbal things, because the person doesn't even have to say anything. But if they walk in the building with a suit, people are going to be like, oh yeah, this person, I want to talk to this person. This person seems like they know what they're doing with their life. So, yeah.
Just to piggyback off of you, Ryan, one thing I was drilled into my head, first impressions are everything. So your appearance is probably the first thing that's going to give away your first, be a part of your first impression. So you always want to look your best, come appearance, especially if you're out, job interview or something, you want to give your best presentation of yourself, so you have to look the part, whether it be your hair, clean cut, nice suit. If you're, going for like a corporate job or whatever, like you want to look the part. Like you don't want to just come off like some slouch, like in like dirty sweats and like like holes in your t-shirt. You know what I mean? Because that's a first impression without even saying a word. Like you could be like the smartest guy ever. I was always told, but if you don't look the part, they're gonna judge you and they're gonna say no. So
Yeah.
Look at that, nonverbal communication at play. What you're saying is you want nonverbal communication. A big thing of first impressions is you just dressing to impress the other person, so they always have a good outlook on you after that.
right,
Yeah.
I would say that another big part of communication is, facial expressions. And when COVID happened, we had to switch from phone calls to virtual meetings with everyone having cameras so we can focus more as a company or as a school.
Yeah.
What do you guys have to think about that? Do you have any experiences too?
Well, I know you were saying before this that you had a lot of experience with that.
definitely. I work in education, and during COVID, I was a para-educator, so I was working in the classroom during COVID. Like I remember, like yesterday, the day we got the call that we're switching to virtual, and everybody was up in arms like, well, how's that gonna work? Whatever. Like kids were like, well, how are we gonna teach the kids? And lo and behold, Zoom came out, and we were to use Zoom. Kids were at home, we were at home, and trying to teach through a screen was one of the biggest journeys I've ever been on in my years of being in education. The learning of facial expression, trying to read facial expressions through a screen, it was one of the funniest things ever, because sometimes the screen would work, sometimes the screen wouldn't, or my favorite was the lag. So when you would think a kid was smiling, but they really weren't, and it was just frozen for a second, and oh man, yeah, definitely some challenges, but it was fun times during COVID with the through Zoom and trying to convey the messages from the other side of the camera through the Zoom.
Hey, we all had memories during that. But going back to education during the COVID era 6 years ago, and just like what you guys mentioned, switching from in-person classes to virtual classes with the use of Zoom meeting. And I want to talk about Zoom. Have you guys ever experienced where your teacher told you that if you have any question or if you want to say something within the virtual meeting or Zoom meeting, I would say, is just hit or tap the raise icon button.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the best examples of nonverbal communication during that virtual learning, is because like we were mentioning earlier, gestures.
Right.
And gestures, raise hand icon on button is gesture. And also going back to what you said from earlier, we want to talk about statistics. Like you said, 93% of all daily communication are made by nonverbal communication. And this is from the Nonverbal Group by Dr. Albert Miramian. He's an author of Silent Messages, and he conducted several studies on nonverbal communication. And yeah, of those 93%, 38% through vocal elements, and the remaining 55% are through the nonverbal elements, including the four categories that I mentioned earlier: the facial expressions, gestures, and of course the postures of the person. Yeah. And then the remaining 7% of the 93% are conveyed through words. So so there's some statistics.
Kind of jumping into what you were saying, the 80 to 93% of people use nonverbal communication in everyday life, and a lot of us, all four of us, we probably do it every day, and we don't even realize that we do it. And one of the things too is we were talking about it before this, when they invented emojis, we use emojis every day. When I text people, I will sometimes answer people's questions via an emoji. I don't even send an actual word or an actual sentence, or sometimes when I do send sentences, I'll use emojis to kind of describe how I'm feeling, because it's just a lot easier than calling somebody, because people nowadays, they don't talk on the phone as much as they used to. And I think people actually, they probably FaceTime more than they actually talk. True. But even then, that's really low now. A lot of people, they just don't they don't either feel like doing it, or a lot of times people just don't have time. Like everyone's so busy now. So, and then kind of going back to when COVID started and the whole Zoom thing, that was new for a lot of people.
Exactly.
Like I can only imagine the older teachers that have probably never used a computer in their life until they started teaching. And then now they all of a sudden they're like, okay, you got to sit in front of the screen. There's going to be like 30 boxes on the right, and then there's you, and you have to watch every single kid, but you're not in person. And I can only imagine like how difficult that must have been. I know, like I never got to experience the Zoom life as much as my sister did. My sister spent all of 7th through 8th grade and into her freshman year doing Zoom, being on Zoom every day. And she used to say, like, one of kind of an example when I'm talking about nonverbal, she used to describe a lot of her kids in her class would not pay attention. They had to have the cameras on because these kids would look at the screen for like when they would first log on, and then they would be looking up. And it's like, we're not like, the teachers, they aren't dumb. Like, we know what you guys are doing. Like, you
Right.
guys are like playing video games, watching television.
Right.
And like you were saying, the teachers are able to see what these kids are doing on their computers.
Right.
And it's like, I can only imagine it must have been so difficult for these teachers to try to adapt. But that's
Yeah.
like a big thing about nonverbal is it's kind of an everyday thing for us.
Definitely. Just to touch on that, I was probably the youngest like aide in the classroom. My teacher that I was working with during that time was probably in, like, I would say in her 60s. So technology was not her thing. So the Zoom was every day was a learning. She was learning how to use it. I was like trying to teach her in between like our breaks, like, okay, hey, like this is the mute button. So if somebody like has their microphone on, like you can mute it. This is like, this is how you go into like breakout rooms and do one-on-ones and all this type of stuff. Like as far as like the nonverbal, like it was just so hard for her because like I said, for somebody of the older generation to go from being able to have your like teach in a classroom with kids in front of you, like I said, like the nonverbal aspect of teaching is probably like one of like the most like 3 most important things of teaching, like because you have the eye contact, which is key when you're trying to like teach something to a student. And then body posture, like if a kid's like slumped over, you can tell they're not like engaged in learning. Or if they're like, how Ryan was saying, like kids on the screen were like looking elsewhere besides the screen, so you obviously know they're not learning, they're not receiving what you're trying to teach them. And especially with nonverbal like cues, like they're not receiving that. Like if a teacher was pointing to something or using a cursor on the screen during Zoom or during COVID on Zoom, they're missing out like what the next thing that is being taught. So I think like that was a very like tough time because when kids came back after COVID, like they were so far behind because they had missed out on so much, like especially in the learning process. Like, and I feel like the non-verbal part of that like was a major like thing that they're missing because, like I said, being in the classroom and being on Zoom, 2 totally different worlds.
To add on to all of this, there's one thing that all the top 99 percentile of streamers have in common, and that is a face cam. Having a face cam and being able to express yourself it gives you the ability to engage your audience to a whole nother level. Because they'll sit there, and even if you're not doing anything on your main game, they'll just sit there and watch you and almost inspect you. It is just another thing that proves that being able to like watch a person is more valuable than being able to hear a person in most instances.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we've answered the question, how much do we actually communicate without words? But before we wrap things up and answer the next question, I just want to share this, especially for the communications major out there. There are some terms that one should know. So first is oculesics, meaning eye contact. Next is haptics, meaning touch. Next is proxemics, space, term of space. Next is chronemics, deals with time. And lastly is kinesics, meaning body movement. So those are some of the vocabulary or terms that one should know as a communications major. Now, let's now answer the question, when does nonverbal communication can go wrong?
I feel like nonverbal communication can go wrong in a lot of scenarios. But one of the main reasons is from this article I found by Miles L. Patterson called Perspectives on Psychological Science, and it was made in November 2023. And it pretty much stated that most people have a fixed view on how nonverbal communication works. They think a smile for one person or one culture means exactly the same thing to another person in another culture. And that's what stuns them when it comes to trying to identify liars or people that might be deceptive. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I agree. I think too, to add on to what you're saying, I think many times where it can go wrong is, even if a person's saying positive words, even if they're like trying to encourage you, a lot of times sarcasm is a big thing in the world, and especially in today's society, somebody could be like basically lying to your face and you don't even know, and they're basically saying like, they could be using positive words, but their body language and everything throws it completely off. You could be like, are you actually like meaning what you're saying, or are you just saying what everybody else is going to say to make me feel better? And I think too, another thing is humans today, throughout the course of humans in general, but especially today, a lot of times we use emotions and stuff unintentionally. We might not even be meaning to sound rude or something, but the way we're looking at the person, how we're acting, it could just throw everything off. And so kind of to add on what you're saying, I agree with that too. A lot of times people do it and they don't even realize it.
Right. To add on, one thing my mom always told me is not what you say, it's how you say it. So like the tone of it, somebody's voice can like display a lot how they're feeling. So like, say like your mom was mad at you and she's like, oh, well, just take out the trash, but in a harsh tone, then like she's upset or you've done something wrong. You know what I mean? Or if you talk to your dog, like, I don't know, like obviously they can't talk back. So like, you say something like, oh, like don't do that. And they just look at you with a sad face. That's nonverbal. Like you can tell that the dog is feeling some type of emotion towards you. So I just think like tone definitely is is part of like the nonverbal aspect of it, like the way you're conveying your emotions. Cause like you could be saying regular words, but how it comes off is you're upset, you're angry, you're happy, like all of that.
Ooh, you can also tell a lot about how people are feeling just from the way they walk. Some people can just storm off and you can just tell exactly, well, that person's mad, probably should not talk to them for a little bit.
Yeah. Or the way they're looking too. I think one thing too, it's kind of a question I wanted to throw out. Have you guys ever, I'm sure we all have, but have you ever had someone say they're fine, but in reality they aren't?
A lot.
100%.
Like, that happens all the time.
Yes.
And people are just like, a lot of people don't want to ask for help. They don't want to say, man, I'm messed up. Like, I'm going through a lot. Like, they don't, a lot of people don't want to. They just want to say it, just keep it pushing. And it's like, that's something too that I feel like is really relatable. So I think just people, it's something that I've personally said, and I've had other people say to me. So
Right.
yeah.
To comment on that, going back to working in a school, definitely, and especially with kids, they're not always the best at like talking about their emotions, but you can definitely, they are very like their body posture and like their facial expressions say it all. Like they can be like, oh, I'm okay, but you can tell like they're on the verge of crying, like their eyes are welling up, like you can see the tears forming. And so something is wrong. Like, and so like just being able to read body language and like facial expressions, I think is key. Like is one of the big ones for me, like especially with nonverbal and working with students, like because they're not always gonna want to talk to you, but if you can read their posture and read their body language, I think that goes a long way in being able to work with, help them and like find a resolution to whatever they're going through.
So with all the things that you guys said, I just want to ask, do you guys think that nonverbal communication is often overlooked or underestimated?
Yes.
Yes,
Definitely.
And why would you say that?
I feel like nowadays, especially with social media, a lot of the people just go for the loudest and most crazy, producer. And people kind of underlook or undervalue the more quiet things. And that's shown in all these Mr. Beast videos where he's just sitting there still as a rock screaming about his video. When you could have a very meaningful YouTuber that knows how to talk properly only get 30,000 views compared to his 150 million.
Yeah.
And this is actually from ResearchGate by Luna Alexandra, written in April 2025. Yes, nonverbal communication plays an equally vital role of often being overlooked or underestimated. Because nonverbal communication, as have been talking about, it uses paralanguage, body movement, and appearance, and even environment. Basically, the 4 categories that I mentioned earlier. And interaction between individuals with different cultural backgrounds. They actually have a high potential nonverbal miscommunication. Whereas, just like what you were saying earlier, maybe for their culture is that it's the way how they talk, they talk loud, and then in your case, you would think that they're mad at you.
Right.
But the thing is, they don't. It's just how they talk. It's normal to them. And with this being said, this actually can lead to a lot of misunderstanding.
Right.
And even nonverbal conflicts.
Right.
And particularly, nonverbal miscommunication is significant in multicultural environments.
Yeah.
Right. And to comment on that, in my research, from the richardreed.com, the global perspective on nonverbal cues. So for example, in Russia, smiling at strangers, they consider that insecurity, and they think something that's odd. So you don't just walk past somebody and smile at them because they're gonna think what's going on with that person? Something is off. Don't you know what I mean? Versus here, in America, that's the polite thing to do. You walk past someone, you smile, you keep it going. That's a normal thing. But like I said, in Russia, it's a faux pas. You don't want to do that because you're gonna look strange. Also, in South Korea, pointing with one finger is considered rude. So versus here, we do it all the time. Over there, or without even talking, where's something at? Somebody will ask you, right there. But in South Korea, that's considered rude. Use the whole hand in South Korea. That's not rude. So if I go like this, that's okay. Don't use one finger.
Yeah, it's hey, you.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that. But you can do this though. Hey, you. And then also, Italy. So Italy, they use high expressions when they talk. They're very demonstrative with their hands when they speak. They're very this and I love you, this and that when they talk. Versus and use rich hand gestures. Versus I guess Northern Europe and Asia, they're very reserved. They don't really talk too much with their hands. They're very stoic when they talk. So that's just a little cultural differences between with the nonverbal cues.
Yeah, it's something that we have to understand as well, especially if we are talking to a person who is outside from the United States, not from here, is that we got to learn how they talk, both verbally and non-verbally. In that way, we can avoid any conflicts or non-verbal miscommunication, especially if we're using a non-verbal communication between the two of you.
Right.
Yeah. Now we've answered when this non-verbal communication could go wrong. Let's now jump in to the third one, lying and deception. How can we detect or know if someone is lying or even deceiving us through nonverbal communication?
From what I've learned from Albert Bridge and a study on psychology in 2019, most people are pretty much guessing if the other person is lying or not because how much they tend to misunderstand, nonverbal communication in psychology.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they see someone blinking a lot or moving in an odd way when they don't understand the context of what's going on in that person's life. For example, they could be tired, they could be stressed from work, or they could be, high on meth, like everyone does get eventually. And that can really affect how other people view them in that day. What do you guys got to think about that?
Well, that was funny. I can add on to what you're saying though, because we were kind of talking about it in our second segment where, facial expressions. If somebody, like you were saying, if a kid is saying I'm okay, but they got tears coming out of their eyes and their eyes are red, they're not okay. Like anyone with a brain is gonna know that.
Right.
And I think just in general too, like I feel like one thing, law enforcement, they deal with that all the time.
Yeah.
When they bring in someone to interrogate them, that's why I'm forgetting what it's called. It's the lie detector test. That's why that's a thing, because you can't, a lot of times, like you were saying, people are guessing. We're guessing half the time, especially if we don't know the person. We don't know if they're telling the truth. I mean, they could be lying the whole time and we wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Especially if we don't know them. And so, the same behavior can mean different things depending on the person, obviously.
Right.
But yeah.
No, definitely, like you said, like trying to detect if somebody's like lying. Obviously, like eye contact would be key. Like, are they looking you in your eye when they're talking to you, or are they like this shifting around, like trying to not like give you that direct like eye contact in their body language? Like, that's a key. Also, like, how are their body posture? Like, are they like slumped down? Is their back towards you? Stuff like that. I think like all plays a role in the communication between the two.
Yeah.
So, with all the things that you guys said, just want to ask, in your guys' perspective or personal answer, how can you guys detect if someone is lying to you through nonverbal communication?
In my experience, people tend to overact. Like they'll try to be happy or try to like act like or change the subject. If they change the subject more than 3 times in a conversation, I know something's off. But when they're trying to like overreact to different or other things I bring up, they're just 2 different red flags that I catch immediately. And eventually, I'll find the truth.
Yeah.
I just gotta poke them enough.
Yeah. Like what you were saying, and they change their story like 20 different times when they're telling the story.
Yeah.
The overly gesturing, like when, I don't know how many times you guys will watch like body cam. I always go back to like criminals because it's like they do it more than I feel like. Everybody probably does it at some point, but like when they're trying to explain the truth, but their hands are doing this or they're like fidgeting.
Yeah.
Like people buy into that.
Yeah.
People do. Like they fall for stuff like that. But there's a lot of people out there, like me personally, kind of like what you were saying. I think just, if somebody is telling me a story and the story is changing every 5-10 times, or, they're looking at their phone when they're talking to me, or like if I ask them a question and they're like, oh yeah, and they're just like, they clearly are trying to do everything but tell you the truth. That's an easy thing for me to be like, oh yeah, you're for sure lying. There's no way you're being honest.
Yeah. For me, like just being able to detect, like, one, if they're looking at me, like eye contact, or if they're like slumped down, like the body posture, they're just like, yeah, I didn't do it. I'm like, okay, like what's going on? Like, why are you like looking like that? Like, I'm gonna think something is up. Like, nah, it doesn't seem right, because you seem guilty because you're like this, staring at the ground while you're talking to me, like your tone is all down. Like, if somebody was confident in what they were saying, they're gonna like be like this, looking you in your eye, like, no, I didn't do it. Like, you know what I mean? Now, obviously there is very good liars out there, and they present it themselves very good, but 9 times out of 10 of what I've like dealt with, like, they won't make eye contact with you. They're like either like you were saying, like fidgeting because they're nervous about like what they're, or trying to come up with what they're trying to say to you in the moment. So I think all of that plays a role in trying to be able to like fish out like what somebody is trying to tell you, like truth wise.
So with that, this is actually research from The Medium by Dr. Paul Ekman, written in July 26, 2021. Not that long. So he said that there are 3 types of gestures. There's the illustrator, the manipulator, and then there goes the emblem. And among those 3 gestures, emblems can reliably be clues for deception. Now, we've talked about a lot of lying, but let's now go to deceiving. Yeah, in my case, I would also say eye contact is how you can detect someone lying through nonverbal communication. All right, because let's go in this situation. You ask a simple question to a person, no matter who are they in your life. You ask a simple question, and they be like answering a lot of stuffs, and then they're when it comes to eye contact, they be looking everywhere. Like,
Right.
yo, I'm like here. Where are you looking?
Yeah.
And I ask you a simple question.
Yeah.
So weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, like, it's happened to me, like, a lot, and I'm sure, like, you guys have had people before that have done that, like, you're talking to someone, and, I mean, I've had my own bosses be like that, so it's just, like, it comes in all, you know, age groups,
Yeah.
and, like, the manipulator stuff, like, I feel like personally I mean, like you were saying, there's people out there that are just very good at it, but I feel like personally there's always something that they do wrong, that like if you're really like people that are trained professionally on how to like be able to figure out if someone's lying or not, there's always something that somebody does that's a slip up.
Right.
I think, you know, yeah, I mean, that stuff is just it's really relatable too, because a lot of people do it, and some people do it so much that they don't even realize it anymore.
Yeah. Just to kind of like touch on that one, according to Dr. David Matsumoto of the APA article, speaking of psychology, nonverbal communication, the truth bomb, there is no Pinocchio nose. So there's no single indicator of a lie. So nobody's nose is growing when they start lying to you. And then also, he mentioned some things to look for. And like inconsistency clusters, kind of how like, you know, people like get caught up in the lie.
Yeah.
Micro expressions, unconscious facial flashes, like 1/10 of a second showing fear or disgust. Consistency check. Do the nonverbal behaviors match the verbal content? So, like nodding yes or no, or saying no in that aspect. Yeah, and then the leakage hypothesis. High stakes liars often leak anxiety or duping delight through subtle hand or foot movements. So they're using this or like this, like they're tapping their foot because, like I said, they're trying to figure out what the next thing to say for their lie. So I just thought that was pretty interesting.
And since you brought up David Matsumoto, so this is actually the proof of everything that we said about lying and deception in nonverbal communication. So yeah, this was according to David Matsumoto from Society for Personality and Social Psychology, written in January 10th, 2024. According to him, deception in nonverbal communication can occur in multiple channels, like of behavior, like what we were guys saying earlier, hand gestures, the pace, and of course the body, eye contact. And going to what I mentioned earlier, you ask a simple question to a person, they said a lot, like a lot, and of those things that they answered, not a single phrase or term answered your question.
Right.
And their eyes would go everywhere when you're like right in front of that person. So yeah, I think we've answered the question: how is lying and deception applied in, or how can we detect lying and deception in nonverbal communication? And that is it for today. I hope you guys learned something new about nonverbal communication. Once again, my name is Josh, your host. Alongside me are my group mates, Jared, Ryan, and Emmanuel. Signing off, saying so long.
If you are interested in a career in sports broadcasting, whether you're commentating a live game
or hosting your own TV show,
for more information, contact Greg Poff. That's me at solano.edu.
we hope to see you here next semester. And remember,
It's more than just sports, it's an education.